This is Get Real and Heal for high-performing women executives and entrepreneurs, where we discuss all things emotional healing and the relationships with yourself, your man, and your money. I'm your host, Jamila McMallow, wife, mother, certified cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner, mindset and relationship expert with over 20 years coaching and mentoring experience. I know that when you're the one that everyone else leans on, the leader and the trailblazer, it can be difficult to let your guard down, be vulnerable, and tend to your own emotions. So I hope today's discussion will allow you a moment to experience a life-changing realization, perhaps even a transformation. So let's begin and get real and heal. So I'm really excited about today's topic because I think that in 2023, the fact that this conversation still has to take place is part sad, but also part good because of the fact that Black women are wanting, to be open to the love of a good man, no matter what his exterior looks like, And I thought to really get into this discussion and conversation, would share with you a little bit about my story. I personally had never dated a man that wasn't Black before I met my husband. And, it wasn't some deliberate choice that I made to only date Black men. The fact is that I was raised in Detroit, and when I was growing up there, the city was 80% Black. And yeah, I had regular interactions with, kids of other races and ethnicities at school. We did gymnastics, we traveled and all of those things. But the fact is, I still was always only ever around mostly Black people. Even our doctors, our dentists, the dermatologists, teachers, neighbors, all the business owners, the police, politicians, everybody was Black. So the good part is I grew up with a very positive view, a sense of pride and a high opinion of my culture, my city, and Black people in general. However, growing up, we learned all the gory details of our history in this country. So I didn't have a Pollyanna view, of how other people would view me as a Black woman. Now, I grew up with friends who had a Black dad and a white mom, but I actually never saw any Black women dating men who were not Black until I was a teenager. And, some part of me just believed that they didn't find us attractive. And in my mind, the word that I really would say is we're invisible. Because it wasn't like, I didn't think, cute is cute, handsome is handsome, So if you're like at the mall in the suburbs, sure, if you see a cute white guy, he's cute. But it wasn't like they were like checking us out or making eye contact. It was like we were invisible. That's what it felt like. And so that's why I said it was just this, not that anybody had a conscious conversation about it, but it was just something that I internalized to mean that, I guess they just, we're just not appealing to them. However, once I became adult, I realized that pretty is pretty to men, and all men like pretty, attractive women. And hey, and they liked me, they didn't care, what color they were and what color I was. They were just like, you're pretty. And, they were very complimentary, et cetera, et cetera. However, the fact is, I got married young. And so I still had not had the first time I got married, I was very young. And up until that point, I still, had not had any experience dating men who were not Black. Now, fast forward into my mid-30s when I went through my divorce and I found myself single again. Morally and spiritually, I had no issue with dating a man or being with a man who was not Black. But honestly, I felt like, a white man could never understand my experience as a minority, and that the relationship would be judged and would have to face challenges, that I wasn't sure I wanted to deal with. So you can imagine, how surprised I was when, this tall white man from Kansas expressed an interest in me. And I was like, what? But I really want to tell you what this really showed me and revealed to me about myself, and really it was God who awakened me in this way. Because the fact is, God is not partial, and he does not separate humans as better or worse based on such superficiality as skin color or hair texture. And you can reference that in the Bible at Acts 10:34 and 35 for yourself. So he doesn't judge us that way, you know. But after my divorce, I did my healing work. I got crystal clear on what I wanted in a husband, you know, as far as like his qualities, his characteristics, how I wanted him to treat me, and blah, blah, blah. And even some physical preferences. But I never said, you know, I want a white guy specifically. And I never said, hey, I want a black guy specifically either. But, you know, you just kind of, I don't know. I just assumed it would not be a white man. Now, with these things that I had determined I really wanted in a relationship, I prayed to God about it every day. So when my Kansas blessing arrived, you know, in my head, I said, you know, I don't want to be hurting nobody's feelings, but, you know, I'm waiting on my husband and this guy ain't it. So, you know, the fact is I was judging a book by its cover. What God gave me was everything I prayed for in a husband, and then some. We've been married now for almost 10 years, and I promise you, God continues to reveal to me little things about this man that are things that I didn't even think or know I needed, didn't ask for, but was blessed with. Because God doesn't limit himself to what we ask for in our prayers. And he also does not respond to our prayers based on human superficial things, you know? He sees us for who we are in the inside, our heart, our thinking, our feelings, our beliefs, all those things, the things that actually matter. And so, again, like I said, he gave me everything I asked for and then some. But through him, you know, essentially blessing me with my husband, he also taught me a powerful lesson. And that was not to judge a book by its cover. Now, isn't that interesting? Because certainly as a Black person growing up in the United States, we definitely are ingrained from a very young age and understand that we're going to be judged just simply based on how we look, by our skin color, by our hair. And I know especially for me, like I mentioned, growing up in Detroit and having two parents who came out of the Jim Crow South and were very much, they were both educators. My father has a PhD, my mother has a master's degree, and we grew up very much ingrained in us about education, you know. And so, and the conditioning was you got to be better, faster, smarter, stronger, because you're going to be already going to have, you know, things against you simply because you're Black. You know, they're already going to be counting you out because you're Black. So you have to do 10 times, you know, what they would do in order for you to get ahead, as it were. So that was ingrained in me, you know, that of course we were going to be judged, but never in my mind was I thinking, hey, you know, perhaps I could be, you know, judging a book by its cover. And it wasn't a judgment in like, I had something against white men, right? It wasn't that. It was, I thought he wouldn't be able to understand my experience. I thought, you know, we wouldn't be able to be on the same page. You know, like I mentioned, I thought, you know, maybe the stares and things would be too much. But the fact is, my husband actually was raised by a Black man. His mother, you know, married his dad. That's what he calls his dad. She married him when my husband was around a year and a half. And that is who, like I said, he calls dad. His biological father was actually an alcoholic and a deadbeat and a drug addict, etc. So my husband grew up in a mixed family, and then they had a daughter, so he had a biracial younger sibling. So he had the same high opinion and positive view of my culture that I did because, you know, he experienced it growing up. And so do you see how God showed me, like, I know your fears, but guess what? This man understands your experience. Stop judging a book by its cover. Stop judging a man from the outside. because my husband absolutely could understand from growing up in a mixed family and getting the looks and visiting places in the South, even having lived in the South for a time. You know, there were certain states they would pass through when they were traveling where they wouldn't even stop, you know, to go to the bathroom. So really, when it came to us being in a relationship, it was me kind of working through my own fears and preconceived notions, you know, right off the bat. The truth is, we have the same taste in music, you know, enjoy a lot of the same things. And again, I was judging a book by its cover. Now, one of the things that I did have to unravel was this idea of, you know, what are other people going to think, or what is this going to be like? And my best friend actually gave me a book to read. It was written by a Black woman who was married to a white man, and I don't remember the title. Otherwise, I definitely would reference it. But it's been so long, and what I'll tell you this is what I remember that I got from the book was that basically it just allowed me to shift my mindset to a place to where I was okay being in that relationship. Like it just gave me permission to just kind of let go of that conditioning and that all of that stuff that I grew up with that I thought didn't matter. Like I would never characterize myself as someone who was prejudiced or had preconceived notions. But of course we all do. But I didn't know it until I was faced with it. And how stupid would it have been for me to, and what opportunity would I have missed if I hadn't been open? And that's why I'm so grateful and appreciative that, number one, I had gotten clear on what I wanted, that I had done my healing work, and third, that I was relying on God. Really, that's number one. I was relying on God throughout the entire process, and so I just trusted him through it, and that's how I was able to know. And so it really is not about the fact that, you know, I never went out. I'm sure, obviously, at this point in the story, you got the fact that I never went out and said, you know, I only want to date white men or anything like that. No. I prayed to God for a good man, for a loving man, a man who had certain qualities and characteristics that would allow me to be at my best and not in emotional combat and not in a toxic relationship. And that's what he blessed me with. And he just happened to be a white man. That's truly it. He could have been a Black man. He could have been a Latino man. You know, it didn't matter, you know, but I had to still work through that just because of the fact that it was unknown. And so I'm not, you know, having this conversation with you to advocate for who a Black woman should marry, right? But I'm just letting you know this, you know, my story, so that you understand that at the end of the day, it's just going to be you and the man that you choose to marry laying up there in that bed together. So it don't matter what nobody else thinks. It's not their choice. It's not their life. It's not their blessing. It's yours. It's all for you. And so don't limit yourself to your old stories and your old beliefs and your old conditioning that are telling you that you're only allowed to date Black men. You know, that's not in the Bible. And like I said, God is not partial, so he doesn't divide people like that. That's a human concept and construct, and it's very limiting, and it prevents you from finding the one thing that you're looking for, which is a good man. And so it shouldn't be about his superficial physical characteristics. It should be about who he is on the inside, who his character, who he is being. And if he's Black, great. If he's white, great. If he's Asian, great. If he's Arabic, awesome. It doesn't matter. Okay? It literally doesn't matter. And what I am also not promoting, because my first husband was a Black man. So what I am not, the camp I'm not in, is there is a camp of Black women who essentially hate on Black men because of the Black men they have chosen to deal with, have a negative view of Black men, and say, well, I'm only going to date white men, or I'm not going to date any Black men because, you know, Black men are all X, Y, and Z. And the fact is, that is not true. The men that we are attracted to is based upon what we believe to be true and possible for ourselves, and that is housed in our brain. Our brains are attracted to what is familiar. So we can go back to our childhood and look at our relationship with our father. Look at what we saw our mother experience in her relationships with men, including our father or stepfather or her boyfriends or whatever. And we will find a direct line, a direct link to the type of relationships and toxicity that we have experienced as adult women looking for love. And it has nothing to do with their race. You know, the reason why you've perhaps only dated black men is because you live in an area where that's just the predominant culture, like me in Detroit. But the fact is, the fact that you were only dealing with the toxic ones was the issue, not their race. It is not a man's skin color that dictates what he's going to be like, because as black people, do we have a shared overall experience? Yes. But do we all have the same experience? No, it's unique. If you grew up in the North, like Detroit, like me, that's different than if you grew up in the South. If you grew up in California, which is the West Coast, that's totally different than the Midwest where I grew up. And I can tell you because now I live in Vegas and it's different. It's different. So we're different all over, even in the same country. We're different even in the same state. You know, if you grew up in Detroit or if you grew up in the suburbs. So we're all different. We're all unique. We're all individuals. So there are no generalizations when it comes to the negative qualities or aspects of men. It's what you are attracted to because of what you have experienced during childhood that has told you this is what you should expect from men. This is how you should expect to be treated, and this is what you should expect to feel. So anytime you're looking at your love life and you're drawing a general conclusion, well, these men and these black men and all this and that, you can put a period at the end of that sentence and stop it right there. Stop it right there. It is not these men. It is not all men. It is not all black men. It is the men you are choosing. Because even when you get involved with men of other races, you will still choose the same type of men. And even if they don't share the same cultural traumas that you do, you will eventually play out the exact same scenario you have in every other relationship you had, unless you do the deep work and inner healing to shift what's going on in your brain, the beliefs that you have, that you formed in childhood, that are telling you what is true and possible, and what you have come to believe to be true and possible for yourself and in your relationships with men. That is the root and the crux of the problem, and that is the solution that I drive home, because that is actually what I do. I don't give out arbitrary advice. I don't, just be talking into the air and out of the side of my neck. It's like, no, the root of the problem is what you believe. Now, those beliefs, yes. Did that conditioning come from the environment in which you lived? Absolutely. Did it come from the society in which you live? You better believe it. All of that is real. But once you get to be an adult, you get to decide what you are going to continue to allow to govern your life. And what I know is if that you are a woman listening to this podcast, you've already, broken through barriers. You've already, trailblazed and done things that you have never seen women in your family do, that you've never seen women in your community do, whether it be being a business owner or the top level black woman at your company or making the kind of money you make, whatever it is, you have already busted past what society or what statistics said you were supposed to end up being. So let's not play that game when it comes to your relationships with men, okay? Let's just not do that because that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with what you are choosing to allow yourself to believe about yourself and about your relationships with men. Okay. And so how do we shift our beliefs? Well, we've got to do that deep healing work. We've got to go back to childhood and look for those parallels and patterns, allow ourselves to release the emotions surrounding those events. And that's really how we unravel those beliefs. And then, of course, we have to create a new set of beliefs that we want to govern our lives, the new things that we want to believe about ourselves and about men and relationships, so that now our thoughts, our mindset is working for us instead of against us. So if you're a highly successful, highly educated, or a go-getter, driven, all those things type of woman. You're already doing so many amazing, incredible things. You've already achieved success. And the fact that you have been successful in one area of your life, which is probably professionally, is the indication that you know how to be successful. And so you therefore can be successful in this part of your life as well, in your love life. You can find a good man. And whether he be a black man, whether he be a white man, whether he be an Asian man, an Arabic man, whatever, a man that's not from this country, okay? Good men do exist. There are 8.5 billion people on the planet. You think you can't find one single man that brings out the best in you? The statistics are on your side. You've just got to get ready, heal, and prepare to receive your blessing. So thank you for listening. I hope that this conversation was good for you and that you learned something. Be sure to subscribe to my podcast as well as to my YouTube channel. You can find all that information on my website at CoachJamila.com, and I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Be sure to visit CoachJamila.com, where you'll find the links to connect with me on social media and more information on my private bespoke coaching for Type A high-performing women executives and entrepreneurs.